Aloha mai kako. O Laura ko'i noa Avelina mai ka YouTube channel ke Aloha no Hawaii. Hello everyone, my name is Laura and welcome to my YouTube channel ke Aloha no Hawaii. In this video, we are continuing our lesson on the Pepeke Nono'a, or possessive sentences. Now in our last video, we learned how to say things like, we have a dog, or Mary has some books. In this video, we'll learn how to talk about how many of something we have. We have 2 dogs. Mary has 10 books. Now, once again, if you didn't see our lesson on possessives, stop this video right now, go back and watch that video. It's lesson 10. You'll find the link probably somewhere up here or it's in the description below. You will need to know the possessive words to make these sentences. Okay, so as a reminder from our last lesson, if you want to say something like, the teacher has a house, the word order is indefinite article he, then the thing being possessed, then your ke possessive word ko or ka, and then the possessor. So for the sentence, the teacher has a house, in Hawaiian that's he hale ko ke kumu. But if you want to quantify how many houses the teacher has, let's say the teacher has 2 houses. That word order is going to be similar. You will start with the quantity or number instead of your indefinite article. Then, once again, you have the thing or things being possessed. And then, instead of the ke possessive, we will use our 0 possessive, o for O-class objects, or a for A-class objects. And then once again, we end with the possessor. So, let's practice that word order using just the English words for our example sentence, the teacher has 2 houses. Start with our number, 2. Then our thing being possessed, house. Then our 0 possessive. Now house is an O-class object, so we'll use o. And then the possessor, the teacher. 2 house or 2 houses, o, the teacher. Okay, but how do we actually say that in Hawaiian? Well, we know the word for house is hale, and the teacher is ke kumu, but we've never learned the word for 2 or any of our numbers. So let's stop right now and learn a few numbers in Hawaiian. For this lesson, we'll learn the numbers, or na huahelu, 0 through 10. We'll have a word when it's a standalone number. This is the word you'll use if someone showed you the number and asked you, what number is this? It's also the word you'll tend to use when you're counting. For 0, it's ole. 1, ekahi. 2, elua. 3, ekolu. 4, eha. 5, elima. 6, eono. 7, ehiku. 8, evalu. 9, eiva. And 10, umi. So once again, that's ole, ekahi, elua, ekolu, eha, elima, eono, ehiku, evalu, eiva, umi. Now, when you're quantifying objects, talking about how many of something that you have, for most of the numbers, you'll use the same word. But we'll have a different word when we're talking about 0 or no, 1, and 10, or numbers above 10. If you're talking about having 0 of something or no quantity of something, you use the word a'ohe. If you're talking about having just one of something, instead of ekahi, you'll use ho'okahi. And finally, if you're talking about having 10 of a certain item, or any quantity above 10, you will put the word he in front of the number. He umi. Okay, now that we've learned our numbers, let's go back to our example sentence. The teacher has 2 houses. We start with our number 2, which we just learned is elua. Then our thing being possessed, house, hale. Then our 0 possessive, again, hale is an O class object, so we use o. And then the possessor, the teacher, ke kumu. Elua hale o ke kumu. The teacher has 2 houses. And what about Mary has 1 house? Again, start with our number. Remember, for 1, when you're quantifying an object, you use ho'okahi. Then the thing being possessed, hale. Then the 0 possessive, o. And then finally the possessor, Mary. Ho'okahi hale o Mary. Mary has 1 house. Okay, what about they have 3 houses? Wait a minute. We're gonna have to stop right here because if the possessor is a papani, a pronoun, they, we, you, I, we're going to have a different word order. So for these sentences, the word order will be number, and then your 0 possessive plus your pronoun, and finally end with the thing being possessed. So you'll see that the thing being possessed and the 0 possessive plus pronoun simply swap places. So for a sentence like, they have 3 houses, we would say number 3, ekolu, then the 0 possessive, which again is going to be based on the thing being possessed. In this case, house, which is still an O class object, so we use o. Then the possessor, they, let's say it's a group of 4 people, so we use la ko. And finally, the thing being possessed, house, hale. Ekolu o la ko hale. They have 3 houses. Does it make sense, the differences in the word order? Okay, what about I have 3 houses? Once again, the possessor I is a pronoun. And so it's really the same sentence, right? Instead of they, la ko, you have I, o. So you might think it would be ekolu o hale. However, just like with our K possessives, when a 0 possessive o or a is paired with the singular pronouns o for I, oe for you, singular, or oya for he or she, those two words become a contraction. So let's review those right now. If the possessor is I, and the thing being possessed is an O class object, O plus the pronoun O contracts to OU. If the thing being possessed is an A class object, the possessive A plus the pronoun O contracts to AU. When the possessor is you, singular, and the thing being possessed is an O class object, the possessive O plus pronoun oe contracts to O. If the thing being possessed is an A class object, the possessive a plus the pronoun oe contracts to ao. And finally, when the possessor is he or she, if the thing being possessed is an O class object, the possessive o plus the pronoun oya contracts to ona. And when the thing being possessed is an A class object, the possessive a plus the pronoun oya contracts to ana. So that means I have 3 houses would be e kolu o'u hale. And you, singular, have 2 houses. E lua o hale. And she has 1 house. Ho'okahi ona hale. But what about Mary has 1 house? Ho'okahi hale o Mary. Again, if the possessor is a proper noun, like the name of someone, or a common noun, that possessor goes at the end. It's only when the possessor is a pronoun does that come at the beginning, right after the number. Does that all make sense? Okay, let's practice some more with some other things that we might own or possess. How about I have 5 cats? Once again, we'll start with our number 5, e lima. And then the possessor is a pronoun I, so we know that the possessive pronoun combination is going to go next. And because it's the singular pronoun, we're going to use that contraction. But which contraction do we use? Remember, the possessive is based on the thing being possessed. Cat, which is a pet. Pets are A class object. So the contraction we'll use this time is a'u. And then our thing being possessed, cats. In Hawaiian, that's popoki. E lima a'u popoki. E lima a'u popoki. I have 5 cats. But what about the woman has 9 cats? We start with our number 9, Ava. And then the thing being possessed, cats, popoki. And then our 0 possessive, again, because popoki is an A class object. And then the possessor, the woman, ka wahine. Eiva popoki, a ka wahine. The woman has 9 cats. How about you, singular, have 4 books? Books are A class objects. Start with our number 4, eha. Then our possessive pronoun contraction because it's a singular pronoun. Do you remember what that is for you? o, and then the thing being possessed, books, puke. E ha o puke. E hao puke. You, singular, have 4 books. But if we wanted to say Bob has 8 books, start with our number 8, e valu. Then the thing being possessed, books, puke. Then the 0 possessive, a, because puke is an A-class object. And then the possessor, Bob. E valu puke a Bob. Bob has 8 books. Okay, how about he has 6 bananas? Bananas is, again, an A-class object. Start with our number 6, eono. And then, yep, it's a pronoun and it's a singular pronoun. So our 0 possessive pronoun contraction. For third person he, it's ana for an A-class object. And then finally the thing being possessed, banana, which in Hawaiian is mai'a. Eono ana mai'a. He has 6 bananas. And the teacher has 10 bananas. Start with our number 10. And remember, for numbers 10 or higher, we add he before the number. So for 10, it's he umi. Then the thing being possessed, bananas, mai'a. Then our 0 possessive, again, bananas are A-class objects, so a. And then the possessor, the teacher, ke kumu. He umi mai'a a ke kumu. The teacher has 10 bananas. Okay, let's go back to an O-class object. How about Mary has no cars? Start with our number no, which is essentially saying 0. And remember, 0 when quantifying something is a'ohe. Then the thing being possessed, car, which is ka'a. Then our 0 possessive, which ka'a is an O-class object, so now we're back to o. And then finally the possessor, Mary. A'ohe ka'a o Mary. Mary has no cars, or Mary has 0 cars. And if you wanted to say they have no cars, again, start with our number, which is essentially 0, a'ohe. And then, because the possessor is a pronoun, we got a different order, you have your 0 possessive, o, and your possessor, they. Let's use la ko again. And then finally the thing being possessed, ka'a. A'ohe o la ko ka'a. They have 0 cars, or they have no cars. How did you do? Mai ka'i. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to teach you one more thing. Now we've learned how to talk about how many of certain objects that we or someone else has. But what if you wanted to ask about that? How many cats do you have? How many houses do they have? Well, to form a question like that, it is super easy. You will just take the exact word order from our statement sentences and you simply replace the number with the interrogative word ehia, which in this case means how many. So if you wanted to say, how many houses does Mary have? It would be ehia Thing being possessed, house, hale. Zero possessive, hale is an O class object. O, possessor, Mary. Ehia hale o Mary. How many houses does Mary have? And if you wanted to ask, how many cats do they have? Again, start with ehia. And then because the possessor is a pronoun, you have then your zero possessive. In this case, cat is an A class object, so we have a, your possessor, they. We'll use la ko. And then the thing being possessed, cats, popoki. Ehia a la ko popoki. How many cats do they have? Make sense? Okay, let's review the word order for all of the sentences that we learned one more time. If the possessor is a common noun or a proper noun, the word order will be number, thing being possessed, your zero possessive o or a, and then the possessor. To ask how many, it's ehia plus the thing being possessed, then your zero possessive o or a, and then the possessor. If the possessor is a plural pronoun, we, you, or they, the word order is number, then your zero possessive o or a, then the possessor, and finally the thing being possessed. And to ask how many, you have ehia, then your zero possessive, then the possessor, and finally the thing being possessed. And if the possessor is a singular pronoun, I, you singular, or he or she, the word order is number, then your zero possessive pronoun contraction, and finally the thing being possessed. And to ask how many, it's ehia, then your zero possessive pronoun contraction, and your thing being possessed. And that's it. So here's your homework. I want you to practice talking about how many things you have by answering the following questions. First, how many cars do you have? Ehia o ka'a. Next, how many TVs do you have? Ehia o kiwi. And finally, how many children do you have? Ehia o keiki. Don't worry if you have none of those things. You know how to say 0. And here's a hint. For all of those answers, you will be saying, I have. So you will use the contraction o'u or a'u. And with this lesson, we have officially wrapped up Level 1 Grammar. If you missed any of the past grammar lessons or just need to refresh your memory, all of those are linked in the description below. And you can always just come back to my channel and find the Grammar 1 playlist. Don't worry, I will still be releasing videos. Now that we've completed our Level 1 grammar, I want to focus on just some everyday vocabulary and some common phrases. I have a few ideas of what I'm going to focus on first, but if you have any special requests, please leave a comment below. And of course, eventually we'll be back with some more advanced grammar. Well, mahalo nui for watching. If you liked this video, please click that thumbs up button. And if you have friends or family who are also interested in learning Hawaiian, please share this channel with them. It has been such a treat to hear from Hawaiian language learners from around the world. It is so great to be sharing my language learning journey with you and to see that you're on that journey as well. And just mahalo nui for helping keep this beautiful language alive. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Again, we will continue having videos. And until next time, ahui ho.